Good evening and welcome to the Town of Erving Select Board Water Commissioners meeting for Monday, March 23rd, 2026. Calling the meeting to order at 6:41. First order of business will be to nominate a chair to oversee the meeting tonight.
I make a motion to appoint Jim Loyne as chair.
I'll second that. Any discussion?
No discussion?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Review of draft information technology position description and community profile.
So I believe I made the final changes that were requested. Specifically, it was to save all of the red lines that you reviewed at your last meeting, and then you had a edit under the nature and purpose of relationship section, which I made that correction. And then we were waiting to see if there was any feedback from Jake about anything that we had in either document, and to date I have not received any feedback suggesting that we have more edits.
So I reviewed the changes and they are as we indicated them in the last couple of meetings, and this job description for IT looks as tight as it's going to be.
Probably.
And the addition of the information technology director community and position profile is fine.
Okay.
And do we need to make a motion to accept the job description?
Well, before we do, if I might, as sometimes happens, we have to look at things 12 times before we notice.
Yep.
Fair.
In the first section,
Okay.
I believe the word judgment is misspelled.
In the first section,
Yep.
statement of duties.
You're right. I will fix that. Good catch. Thank you.
And
Page one, about halfway down, Bill.
Oh, okay.
supervisory response, the sections go supervision
Okay.
required, supervisory, confidentiality, accountability, and then judgment is just missing an E.
I will make that correction.
But other than that, I agree with Bill. I think it's as tight as it's going to get, and the community profile will give potential candidates, if this job is in fact approved and posted, will give them an idea of what they're coming into.
So besides approving the job description, what are the next steps?
So yes, we need the approval of the job description, and then secondly, I just need to know if you're ready to begin advertising immediately, if you want to delay for some reason and wait for sometime in April. Whenever you say you're ready to release, I can arrange for that. It takes usually a lead time of about 4 or 5 days to get the ads into local media.
Right.
But for something like this, you probably also want to cast a wider net. So
Right.
I would use MMA and some of the other professional posting boards that would circulate these types of positions.
Okay.
So my only comment on that would be, I don't recall us having real in-depth conversations about compensation, or
That's a good point.
have we done any comp studies, or?
So we have not specifically studied this position, and we've never really had this position before. The county does a fairly decent job of collecting all of our peer municipalities and their compensation data, and of all the positions, they don't have one for IT. I do know that our peers in Greenfield have these types of positions, but I have not found it in some of the other departments. I think largely they're outsourced, or they do what we do and have some part-time assistants. So we don't have a direct corollary in Franklin County. Obviously, I've done some just internet searching for comparable positions, and obviously, the farther east you go, or to the private sector,
Higher
pay scales are
education.
much higher.
Yeah.
Looking at what our comp schedules look like, I originally started with our department heads started at least grade F. So I started at least there. You have a few positions that are graded slightly higher than that. So you could take a look at that in terms of our comp schedule that currently exists today. I did follow up with council. Council did confirm this is a FLSA exempt position, so it can be salary. But there is not a statute that allows for an employment agreement. So it would be one of those salary positions without an agreement unless we sought special legislation. So for the compensation piece, I don't know exactly where you all want to land on that. I know when we get later on in our conversation about the budget, I do bring attention to the fact that we need to budget to allow for this position.
Mhm.
And I offered a suggestion that we hold at least $100,000 for that budget to allow you to do what you need to do to proceed with hiring. But I don't know exactly where you all will land.
All right. Well, grade F, if I remember correctly, starts somewhere around 70,000.
I think it's around
73
77,
maybe?
75, somewhere in that
Yeah,
range.
yeah.
It's in the 70s.
But depending on the individual's qualification that comes in and
Mhm.
their experience,
Mm-hmm.
I expect that may increase that, but
Right.
but we don't know until
Right.
we encounter the candidates.
Correct.
Okay, so, I'd be comfortable approving these. I'm in favor of that. As the job description as amended. So if we were to post, would we want to establish a range?
So
Mhm.
the exact law is escaping me right now, but employment law has evolved, and we do need to advertise what our hiring range typically is for the position. So I do include that information in our posting. So we should at least provide a minimum, and where you think the max is. It doesn't mean that the three of you can't adjust it, but we do need to be transparent about that.
Okay. And without,
I had put together the hiring range from for step 7, which was, if you remember that.
yeah, I think you handed,
Yeah.
That's right off.
The range being from 73,000 step 1 to 95,000 step 10.
September.
okay, so, and you said step 7 was what you,
No,
Grade 7.
grade 7.
grade set. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So,
So I can post that full range if you're comfortable with F, at least to start.
Yep.
And again, as we collect information
yeah,
through the advertising process, if we need to make a course correction, then
Mhm.
I can come back to the three of you. You can all have that conversation if you think it's warranted.
Agreed.
yeah, I'd be in agreement to do that.
Okay. All right.
So,
And then I guess to your last question, do you want me to begin advertising or do you want to wait?
I would prefer that we go out as soon as possible.
And the plan is to have somebody in place for July 1st?
Yes.
agreed. So,
So I'll make a motion to accept with Jim's amendment the position of, where am I? Okay. The job description for Director of Information Technology to include
We'll make that typographical correction.
To include information technology director, community, and position profile.
I will second that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll get that going.
Thank you. All right. We have 8 minutes before our joint meeting. Would you at least start the conversation on draft of the facilities maintenance manager position? Glenn, do you want to come up?
So the last conversation you all had, you were reviewing a red line changed draft, and Glenn brought with him one more adjustment he was looking for in the skills section. So all of that's been incorporated into this final draft. And then one thing I caught was that the compensation schedule was referring to general government, and it should have been referring to public works. So I've made that correction. And the appropriate grade under the public works schedule is PW5. So I've made that correction as well.
Okay.
But there's no other changes in this
So
from last week.
you want to discuss the additional item you asked for, the change?
It was on the back page, under the skills. And instead of proficient, it'd be knowledge of.
So top of page 4, right
No.
after skills semicolon, that's just been revised. And
No.
for some reason that list of skills were all in parentheses for some reason. I'm not sure why, so I just removed that. Made it just one list.
Okay. Other than that, you're satisfied with it?
I am.
Bill, any?
Glenn, we had talked, I had asked you about, have you checked with the tech school as far as any additional training that could be provided by them?
Have not checked with them. Brian works with like a wider range of professional trainings.
Yep.
So that's what we're waiting to hear back from.
Okay. Okay. And that would include what?
So we have everything through the insurance company,
Yep.
specifically related to facilities. We have through the Mass Facilities Administrators group. I believe this position should be encouraged to become a member of that
Okay.
professional organization and avail themselves of those trainings. In addition to that, this position is going to be working a lot with the EDA requirements for all the public facilities, and so there's under the MOD office at the state, there's a host of trainings about making sure that public facilities are available and accessible to residents of all abilities. So we have a long list of trainings to begin with.
Okay.
That on top of all of our software vendors for the
Okay.
various building management systems. So training will not be in short supply for this position.
Well, I have no additional information that at this current time that I would want to add to the facilities maintenance manager job description, so I am satisfied with what we have to date.
Okay.
And
So I'm in agreement. I'm just going to ask that we correct the word judgment in this one as well.
We really were against the letter E, weren't we? I will make that correction as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
so when will this position take place?
If you all are satisfied with the final version, I would ask you to consider making a motion to adopt it, and then I can work on the next steps and bring forward recommendations on how to proceed.
I would entertain that motion.
Second. I make a motion, we accept the Director Information Technology job description as written.
Not that one.
When-
Oh. I'm sorry. My, starting over, I make a motion, we accept the facilities maintenance manager job description as written.
I'll correct the typo.
Okay. I'll second that motion. Any further discussion?
None?
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It is 6:57. Do we have time to review meeting minutes of March 16th, 2026?
I've reviewed the meeting minutes of Monday, March 16th, 2026. I make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
I will second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Still 6:57. Can we jump to the taser procurement?
Sure. So right in front of you, there's a slight amendment to the memo. I just had the wrong contract reference, so I made that correction for you. Everything else stays the same.
So I have no concerns. I'm ready to move forward with the recommendation.
I have no concerns either.
I make a motion to engage Axon Enterprises Incorporated for the purchase and maintenance of tasers and related equipment for use by the police department for a 5-year term, for a term of 5 years, subject to annual funding at town meeting in an amount not exceeding $31,856.40, and to authorize Robert Holst, Chief of Police, to sign the agreement.
I will second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We will get that underway.
All right. And it is 6:59.
For COG, will take 5 seconds.
I was going to say, why don't we
Well,
grab the
ready to do it?
FERCog amendment? Brian, if you want to just give us a...
High level. Your open space and recreation plan was being performed by the planning staff at FERCog. They came to you in December and asked for a 3-month extension just to make sure we had enough time to get final revisions in January and submit to the state. The state just responded about a week ago, and so they just need a couple weeks to finish up that work to respond and finalize the document. So they're asking for a no-cost, one more additional extension through June 30.
As somebody who worked on that document and worked with them, I can say for the price they're asking, the services are worth every bit of it.
Yes.
And then some.
Agreed.
So Brian, do we include the motion as well with that?
So yeah, if you are okay with extending their services to June 30, I just need that motion.
Okay.
And there should be one on page 53 of your packet.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen agree to an extension of the agreement with the FERCog until June 30th, 2026 at no additional cost.
We,
And is it okay if I sign the agreement on your behalf?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
okay. I will second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll get that done.
Okay. It is now 7:01, so
And I'll make a motion to approve amendment number 2 to the agreement for services by and between the Franklin Regional Council of Governments and the town of Erving to prepare the town of Irving's open space and recreation plan update as presented, and to authorize Brian Smith, town administrator, to sign the agreement.
I will second that motion. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And with that, it is now 7:02. We will call to order the joint meeting with the Select Board, Water Commissioners, and joint meeting of Finance Committee, Capital Planning Committee. Welcome, everyone. I guess if I was truly efficient, I would have invited you to get settled in while we knocked off those last few items. But
As everybody's settling in, there was a memo I owed you, and it's in front of each of your spots. I don't know if you all have a preference, if we look at the ATM warrant first, or if you want to go over the memo I just provided you, and I can go line by line and explain it.
Whatever you do.
Do you want to talk about
Why don't we
legal
start-
jargon or money first?
why don't we start? Let's always talk money first.
Okay. All right. So in front of you, there should be a memo from today. Just to recap where we left off last week, there was a conversation looking at our projected revenues, and I gave you some updates as to where we stood with sources of funding, and our initial first request from all the departments, and what that left us with. And at that first review, it left you with a deficit position of $317,000. I went back over the budget scenario. Brandon and I worked on it last week, and then I met again over the weekend with Brandon and Chairman Smith. And we identified a few outstanding items from your last 2 months of hearings and conversations that we're having. So I just wanted to summarize those items and just point them out to you. So first has to do with the taser procurement that we just worked on. You all had heard a proposal from the Capital Planning Committee to, instead of waiting for FY27 to deal with the taser replacements early, Chief gave you a few options, and your recommendation was to embed it in the operating budget and to make the necessary adjustments. And then we went to town meeting and asked for a 5-year contract authorization from the voters, which they approved. So the cost associated with that contract is $6,000 a year. So there is a proposed, there would be a proposed amendment to the police department budget to incorporate that $6,000 that you all previously discussed. Library department met with you about a month ago and discussed their budget request. And I know there were several requests on there, but the one that you all focused quite a bit on was the requirement to maintain 20% materials funding in light of other budgetary changes to maintain your state certification. So if you were to adjust the library's budget to maintain that 20%, it was an approximate $10,200 that would need to be adjusted by. The EMS department budget, they've been working on the assessments in the town of Northfield, which is one of our primary service providers, as well as the town of Orange. The final adjustments are coming in, and as it currently is reflected in the Zobrio system, we would need to make an adjustment of an additional $3,600 for EMS services. So just bring that to your attention. I did just have a chat with Chief Wonka before this meeting. He's revisiting that one more time. So if that has an opportunity to come down instead, I'll bring that back to you all next week if I learn differently. But that's what it was as of today. We didn't get a chance to talk through my budgets a few weeks ago. It dawned on me after Jake reminded me that we had run over time, and so we sort of pushed those off to the future. We never revisited them. So while I provided a level funded budget request, one area I do want to point out is that legal services are exceeding what we had budgeted in the past. And so it is probably an area that we do need to adjust and revisit. And so I'm putting forward just one potential scenario would be about an additional $60,000 for legal services. As we were going back line item by line item, it came to our attention that there was a input error in the school committee stipends. They were put in at about $4,000 and it should have been at $7,000. So we need to adjust school committee stipends to maintain current funding with today by $3,087. Excuse me. We had a conversation a few weeks ago with the highway superintendent regarding snow removal and the cost increases for materials and contracted services. So reviewing where we are today, there's potentially a bill or two that hasn't processed through yet. So it would likely be something that we should consider to adjust that budget. And the working number we were working with was $41,400. Obviously, snow is an area that you have a little bit more flexibility legally with than other departmental budgets. But I think it's safe to say that we understand that the budget that we've been working off of, level funded for years, is no longer sustainable for removal services. Another conversation that I know the select board's been having for months, maybe not so much with everybody else at the table, is regarding the IT department. And they've been working with department heads to identify what the future of IT support needs to look like for the town to keep all of the services running that we currently have in place, and prepare for whatever's coming next. And so we don't have that fully ironed out, other than the board just approved the job description today. And we need to begin the hiring process, and we've never hired for this position before. So we need a working number to appropriate for that. And so I'm starting by suggesting 100,000, but I don't know what the right amount is in full transparency. So another thing that we've all talked about at this table, and it needs to go through one more review, but what has passed to date is a single vote on whether or not to have the treasurer's position transition into an appointed position. The current stipend for the treasurer's position is mid-70s, and so I know that the budget request reflects a reduction. I think the assumption was that somebody new would come in on the grade F schedule for department heads, would come in between steps 1 and 3, like most department heads were, and would be at approximately 30 hours. If the voters approve this a second time, which is at the ballot, the board would have to adopt a job description, just like we did for the other positions tonight, and have a conversation about the level of service that you're looking to staff and what we're hiring for. And because you haven't made that decision yet, I think I'm a little concerned about bringing that budget down than where it currently is, because I don't know what you're going to decide. And if you do decide that you need more than 30 hours, your hands will be tied. So I think my suggestion would be to restore that funding by adding $16,000 into the budget, to at least allow the board to have that conversation, and that would put the wage for that position back in the mid-70s. And then as a reminder, we have not had the chance to discuss base wage adjustments for non-union personnel. That was something we had hoped to do earlier in this process, but just wanted to remind you we have not settled on an adjustment for FY27. So if I just take those items I listed and add it up, you're at approximately an additional $240,000 that we would need to identify. That with the previous 317 means that we're looking for something in the ballpark of $557,000. So potential source. Actually, before I move on, any questions before I continue? No? Sources. Okay. So some suggestions on sources. And the first one is going to be new to us, and I'm hoping it's received openly. But you all have been putting money into your OPEB account for well over a decade, and you're in a rare position that most towns have not reached yet, where you're close to what the actuaries would say is full funding. We're not quite there, but we're pretty close. You're generating a significant amount of interest on that fund, which is fantastic for the health of the fund. And as of November 30th, you had generated already for approximately $425,000 in interest on that fund. And OPEB's sole purpose is to provide for benefits related to our retirees. So I wanted to broach the topic with you all about whether or not you would be ready to consider starting to fund retiree benefits from the interest that's being generated off your OPEB fund. And just for comparison purposes, your estimated retiree benefit costs for FY27 is just shy of $400,000 for next year.
Questions as we go along, or at the
Sure.
end of your?
Yeah, it's your meeting.
Entertain any questions as they come up while they're fresh in our minds.
No, I'm just curious on the OPEB, which is retirement,
Right.
for retirement costs. I understand we're ahead of many other cities and towns in the state, but how far are we from being funded the way that they would want us to be funded? Is that like 2037 or something? Or
You're so good at that.
if you don't know this minute, it's not.
Actually, let me pull up the right report. I will say this as of the date it was issued because it's a moving target.
Yeah.
And there's too many moving pieces when they do this work that I would fail to explain properly. So I'm not even going to try. But at the end of fiscal year 24, and you have this audited every 2 years. That was our last report, and it comes out about 6 months after the fiscal year closes, so December. So this is December of 2024, looking at where we were as of June 30, 2024. According to this, where's the right table? Let me back up one more, 'cause I seem to have missed it. So according to this, we will, in theory, we would have arrived at being fully funded and able to begin drawing from the fund June 30th of 2028. So in 2 years.
Couple years, okay.
I did call our financial advisor on this today. They don't take a position one way or the other about whether you do this, you don't do this. This is the purpose of the fund, is to eventually fund these liabilities. All that would change is the date you reach fully funded. So he said, worst case scenario, obviously we have to model it out. It puts it out 10 more years that you finally reach fully funded. We're still in a position that's much different than some of our comparables.
Yeah, I asked because it seems like if we would be fully funded in a couple of years anyways, not leaving the interest in there isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. It might push out a year or two, but there's no danger to any of our retired people
No.
or our funding of anything that we need for retired people.
Right.
Which, when I initially saw it, I thought we're kind of kicking the can down the road, but it's a short road we're on.
I was a little nervous to even bring it to you all.
Yeah,
Because
so-
this is the first time we're even going to have this conversation. Right. But you're right.
If we're gonna be in a place to start funding retired things out of this fund, which it's set up for, anyways, in a couple of years, I don't see a big problem with funding it now. Though we still do have a problem if this will be an ongoing issue. What do we do next year and the year after? But I think this is not unreasonable, just my point of view.
Just a change of the way that we think about it's not the same as a stabilization fund, but the way that we approached capital a few years ago, where you were putting a certain amount in and only drawing a certain amount out and creating that mechanical piece. It felt like we were doing too much at town meeting, but it was to get us sort of in the habit of thinking about it as an account that has a very specific purpose. And I think we've been very hands off this. We've only been depositing for all these years.
Yeah.
And this may be an opportunity to start to structure the conversation, not only amongst ourselves, but with the voters around what our potential liabilities are and what that looks like annually when we're paying retiree benefits and making sure we have sufficient funding in this fund. The other thing to keep in mind is because we do this every 2 years, at the end of this fiscal year will be the time to audit this again. So this will give us a good, fresh opportunity maybe this fall to go over this report together and see what strategy you want to take going forward.
Okay.
And I assume because it is not, I guess I've always thought of OPEB as having to be fully funded before you could draw from it. So it does not need to be?
It does not need to be fully funded.
Okay.
I mean, I think that is the goal, but
Yeah.
I want to be clear, and I'm not an actuary, but fully funded is a moving target. There's so many life expectancy changes in health insurance rates and contributions, retirement age changes. There's a lot of things that get factored into how they come to these rates.
Yeah.
And so working off a report that was 2 years ago means that data is stale, and all of those factors have adjusted in the last
Sure.
few years. So it may always be a bit of a moving target.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of thoughts on this, and you sort of just touched on one. Is if we're making about 425 in rough numbers, and we need slightly less than 400, so say 425 and 390, we're still holding on to roughly 35K or 8%-ish of our interest earnings, which will continue the compound growth. So we're not completely sacrificing all of our interest earnings to fund this for what might be, I wouldn't say a stopgap measure, but at least an exploration of, is this something we want to do moving forward? I know interest rates are going to drop. What our earnings moving forward won't be as much, but we've done well in good years, and we're not going to do as well probably for the next, I'm going to guess, 2 to 3 years before the pendulum swings back. I'm not sure where I get that basis of knowledge from, but we'll just say it for conversation's sake. So I think I'm in agreement with Dan on that. It might be worth it. Now, I hope on what Brian alluded to is we experience the problem that our retirees do live long and healthy lives, and we'll be drawing from these expenses for some time to come. So
That's a good problem for our retirees to have.
Absolutely is.
so,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But as somebody, I spoke to both our financial advisor and to town council about this to make sure that I wasn't completely in left field. Again, your financial advisor's not taking a strong position one way or the other. It's an appropriate use of the funds. If you made the decision to do so, all it's going to do is push out your date. Council can help us. I need to go back over the trust documents from 2012 when you first created the trust. But council can help us craft the correct language for town meeting if you want to proceed. But no concerns about drawing if that's what you'd like to do. That this is the purpose of the funds, and he reminded me that the whole premise of creating these trust funds was to get to a point where retiree liabilities, which are an important responsibility that we have for our retirees, were something that were planned for and provided for, without having to be something that the tax base had to annually raise and appropriate for. So this is the goal, to get to a point where the fund is almost self-sustaining and it's meeting your liabilities, and the retirees continue to be cared for while removing that from the annual raise and appropriation responsibility. So
any other questions, commentary? Okay. Hearing none at this time, you want
it's okay to at least explore it a little bit more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. The next one, and this is the one that we've been talking about with the assessors for the last few years. I always start at 200,000, and then we go back and forth about whatever the right amount is. And I think we've come to learn in the last year that there's probably no dollar amount that we could identify that is going to be the right amount to put in this fund. But I did sit with your principal assessor and talk through what we have for annual anticipated exemptions and abatements, the reality that we have 3 pending years of ATV cases, that even if we put $200,000 in this fund, it still wouldn't be enough to cover the worst case scenario if that was to happen. By no means am I saying that any decision like that is even close to being decided. But the question about whether or not $200,000 being the right number, I don't think the assessors could say, yes, that's the right number. It's just the number that I personally have been holding for this exercise. So I think I would like to at least start the conversation amongst everybody, that we revisit my initial suggestion at holding 200, and that I would suggest reducing that to 100, and making sure that we continue to make good on all of the things that we anticipate the assessors needing to be able to review and abate and process for exemptions, with an understanding that if the assessors come to us and we have some developments in future ATB cases, that we would meet with the assessors and work to figure out a solution for those.
Yeah, I'll speak at the last assessor meeting. They did request the 200,000. On the other hand, it's my understanding, I'm not inside the head of the Department of Revenue, but it's my understanding that as long as we're not putting in nothing,
Right.
and no anticipation of anticipated abatements, we're putting in something to cover, what we believe we reasonably have, and we really don't have an idea how appellate tax board cases will turn out. Many years we didn't have to pay anything. Some years we've had to pay a substantial amount. But if there's a substantial amount that we need to pay, if that's the way the chips fall, it's just my understanding that putting in this 100,000 or not isn't going to make a lot of difference. It's likely that it would be more than another 100,000. So,
Right.
make a big difference. I'm not speaking as an assessor. I'm just telling you what they thought about it. I know that they would like to have more.
Right.
But in the reality of it, I don't think the Department of Revenue, I don't think that they would find fault. We're putting in 100 grand. It's what the community can afford to do. And Department of Revenue doesn't know what the appellate tax was going to do either.
Right. Right. And I don't even know that you will, I don't want to prejudge anything because I don't think any of us know, but I don't know that you'll have a decision in FY27.
May not,
I don't know that you will.
may not.
So, again, nothing we're going to make a decision on tonight. I'll just say, in looking at it and listening, setting that number at 100 is something that I would consider, with an asterisk, that if we come up with a loose number when we get towards the end, and that could slide back closer to the 200, we find out, well, we have 40,000 left, or 50,000 left, or 20. If we set that number that way, so that it, again,
These two numbers, the OPEB and the overlay, take a huge chunk out of the 557,000 deficit.
they do. And again, these are, Brian's presenting us with options, things to think about, and there's some other things still to come. There's the 10,000 people watching. But wait, there's more.
Okay.
The next one, I want to be very clear, I'm not advocating for the cutting of any benefits deserved to our veterans, but we have a line item, a budget regarding veteran benefits. I have traditionally been over budgeting that line item to make sure that we never had an issue with providing for veterans, because that number can change from year to year. But if you look back historically over the last several fiscal years, we've been funding at $20,000 a year, and we've been spending less than 10. So there is approximately $10,000 worth of capacity in that line item that could be shifted to another cause that we know would be spent throughout the year. So I want to be clear about why I'm bringing it forward. It's only because I've been budgeting at this number. You all have been supporting that. The voters have supported it. but traditionally we've been spending less than $10,000 on that line item. And so that is somewhere there is capacity.
And it's my understanding this veterans benefit that we're talking about here is different than should the town ever decide to accept the thing we talked about last week.
It is.
That's as part of an abatement process.
That is correct.
For veterans that have issues.
Correct.
Disabilities or whatever. This is different. This
That
is
is
veterans come and they have a need. You don't know who's gonna walk through the door, what they're gonna do. But funding at 10,000 instead of 20, when that's traditionally what we've been spending,
Right.
doesn't sound like it's cutting anything away.
We're not
And if a
cutting
veteran
anything.
came in the door tomorrow and they needed something, we would
Yes.
address it, I believe somehow.
Our veterans agent, for those who are unfamiliar, the veterans agent services were aggregated into a department that the city of Greenfield runs for us, and it's a Upper Pioneer Valley Veterans District. We've been a member of that for, I believe, well over a decade now. And so we have veteran agent staff. They come here and they meet with veterans here in town and at their Greenfield office. And so they work with the treasurer's office and the veteran to process the benefits. So I'm just responsible for making sure that the department's funded. But you have veteran agents who work with them to make sure they get every benefit that they're entitled to. Correct.
So is that $20,000 a administrative?
This is separate from the administrative fee. So there's also the administrative fee to your question that we have to pay the city of Greenfield to run it for us. So that has not changed.
Okay.
So, sounds like a truth in spending issue to me. Okay.
And then the other ones I'm listing for you, I personally am not necessarily making a recommendation to make an adjustment, but I'm just calling attention. I know your guidance that you issued at the beginning of the year when we started the budget process was to ask departments to level fund their ordinary expenses, not their wages when your wages would go up. So going back through the review, and I'm going to look one more time to see if we've missed any. There are a couple departments that did have some relatively small increases to their budgets, but they're increases. So I'm just calling attention to that. For our education departments, and I know that our business manager is here with us today.
Join us if you'd like.
Sure, yeah, let's see if you have any questions.
Thank you for making the trip.
Secondary education is projected to have a slight increase, and so the request is $61,000 higher than it was for fiscal year 26. I know there's been a lot of discussion in the past about secondary budget. I know when we were looking at sources of free cash, that secondary education was one source of free cash for us this past year. I know Caitlin and I have looked at the numbers, and she's got some details about how she arrived at the projections that we have. But you have had a practice over the last few years, I should say, of working with the school committee to level fund this particular departmental budget, with the promise that if October census numbers change and the need is higher than what the budget would support, that you would take this back to town meeting to meet with the voters and make an adjustment. And so far in all these years, we haven't had to do that. So I just bring that to your attention. Obviously, Caitlin's here if you have further questions.
I was going to say, if you've done some homework and want to bring us some numbers, I'd love to hear them.
Sure. So our elementary budget is an increase for FY27 of 1.54%. We worked really hard to get it low. We have a COLA of 3.5% on top of steps. But a lot of that isn't, some of it was we reduced a paraprofessional position that wasn't a cut to staff, but was just a position that wasn't filled. We reduced some lines, but a lot of it has to do with our secondary students that are aging into this, or elementary that are aging into secondary, especially for special education expenses. So we had a couple age to secondary, we had a move-in, we've had some more expensive, so that's why our secondary is going up 4.8%. That is with a 8.5% decrease to the budget last year. This budget, we're pretty on track. Last I checked, we were about, well, actually, I still have it open somewhere. So with no more expenditures other than what's already encumbered, the transportation, the special education tuition, the tuition to Gil Montague, it looks like we have about $35,000 left. We have a large sixth grade.
26.
What?
For fiscal
This
year
is for
26.
26.
Yes, sorry.
Yep, that's just want to clarify.
So we had, and the adjustment last year actually matched. I'm glad that we had a lower budget. But it doesn't mean that they continue to go down. So we had a weird year last year with, for FY25, the number of students in regular education at Gil Montague went from 54.6 to 44.5. We had a large decrease of students there. And a lot of that's unpredictable. We can look at how many slots there are at the Franklin County Tech School, but it's hard to gauge what students are going to school choice out or go to charter or other schools in the area. So the projection for next year is a 4.8% increase. A lot of it has to do with out-of-district placements that have moved into secondary, and then I think, pretty conservative projection of what our Gil Montague students are going to look like, but we don't really have a firm number until the fall.
Right, and that's that October.
The October census. And correct me if I'm wrong, we have some relationships with some districts that bill us based on a formulaic model that they use, maybe a past year's data to create the assessment. But Gil Montague, because we're not district members, we're tuitioned, it's like a contract. We're getting billed specifically for the students attending when they attend. So if somebody starts late, they may not be on that first census number, but they may show up at the end of the year. And conversely, if somebody starts in October and they end, in January and they transition to another school, we won't be paying for that student through the end. It really is pretty accurate, true billing.
Yeah, we're billed quarterly. We don't get the first quarter bill until late fall. And then those numbers could change. We also had a big swing in special education students at Gil Montague. That rate is a lot more. So for FY26 for this year, it's $16,753 per student for a general education student. For a special education student, it's $46,993. And our amount of students went from FY25 last school year of 0.55 special education enrollment to 3.4. So there was a increase in the number of students with a higher tuition rate. And these are things we don't know until we start to receive our first quarter bill in late fall.
Questions?
So does this 61,000 increase, does that count for the tech school as well? Or is this just Gil Montague and
Yes.
school choice and charter?
Yeah, the tech school tuition is paid for out of the town's budget.
Right.
Okay,
There's a separate assessment for that.
okay.
And to your question about charter and choice, that doesn't show up in either of these budgets. That
Okay.
shows up on the cherry sheet.
Okay.
And so in the 800 sections of our budget, the state, and right now we only have the governor's numbers, so they will change all the way through. And then to Caitlin's point, they could change again in the fall. But they will give us updates until about June about where they believe our school choice numbers are going to look. And they look historically. I don't know exactly when students have to make their decisions, but it's possible that there's a change one way or the other. And we've experienced that in the past where we think there's going to be a change happens with student enrollment. And so our state charges are actually less than what we anticipated. And again, it could go in the other direction where it's slightly higher. But that's all handled on through DESI on the cherry sheet.
Personally, I would recommend sticking with how we've been doing it. I think that has worked well for us in the past. And I think given the budget this year, overall, the entire town budget, I think it might be wise to stick with that,
To level fund.
to level fund it. And then if we need to go back for a town meeting, go back for a
With
town
that
meeting.
commitment to
Yeah.
the school committee.
Yes.
Because of how unpredictable the numbers are, I kind of agree with that a little bit. And if we, at least if we're given some agreement that if we do, if we have no control over the numbers. So when we get a tuition assessment, we have to pay it. So if our numbers next year, if we have, our sixth grade's 19 Erving resident students, I don't know how many are going to Gil Montague. It's a bigger class. If we come in over budget, as long as we have an ability to say, hey, we don't have the money because our budget.
Well, we will make Gil Montague whole, one way or the other for our students. I think our credit and our reputation's pretty good, so.
I think you all have maintained this commitment for the last several years that you've been doing it this way. And so to date, we haven't had to do it, but you've been consistent on that, so.
Someday we'll reach that point. But
Right.
until then, we've had about a decade or more of having trust where it used to be the school committee would ask for, not the school committee now, but previously, they'd ask for an extra 100 or 200,000 and turn it back in free cash if they didn't need it.
Yeah.
And it was a long discussion to just trust us. If you really need something, when it comes down to it, we'll find a way to get it for you. But in the meantime, don't just put in a whole bunch of extra. And they've done at what is it, 1.54% increase for elementary. They've done a wonderful job, I think. I shouldn't say that because being school committee, that's the only job I did. Before I got there, people did a good job. I'll leave it that way. And they continue to.
No, I do appreciate the hard work, and I agree with Dan. There were years when it seemed like, there was more than was really necessary, and I'm sure would get it back in free cash. And maybe those years were different than these years. 1.54% with a over 3% COLA, and working to find those truth in spending numbers and really fine tune it. It's not easy. It's hard work, scrutinizing work. So appreciate that. I also, I know that, to Deb's point, we won't really know until October, and at that time, maybe we, if we need to go back to the town and say, we're over budget, and remind people that this is not a poor reflection on the schools or the school's budgeting or anything. This is a if this was the decision we arrived at to level fund, it's a decision we made as joint boards. So I will say, in fairness, the school has taken some heat in previous years as well. So in fairness to them, if we were to make that decision, we would own that decision.
Could I just have the minutes show that my praise of the school committee was for previous year's school committee, not the one that I happen to be on?
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Mr. Hammock has to frequently change hats during meetings. Any other questions, comments? Caitlin drove. Nothing else?
So
No?
before Caitlin leaves, so I'm clear, everybody's in agreement that that's how you'd like to proceed, so I can send that message back to the school committee? Because I know that they just voted on their draft budgets, so we probably have to have an amended vote on that.
We didn't last year because we didn't know about it until later, so I don't think that we have to.
Okay.
But
We can-
the school committee can make that decision.
Yep.
I think. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to point out, and then there's just while I'm calling it out, there was that slight change, though you all just discussed with Caitlin, to the primary education, and it's under the 1%. So I just was calling attention to the $10,000 over the ordinary expenses. I don't know if there's any concern about that, just before she leaves, and then it comes up.
So, if we're going to hold one department accountable for that, we're going to hold all departments accountable for that, and I think we're trying to here. If I'm looking at this with the documentation provided correctly for FY25, the gross elementary budget was, and I'm just going to use whole numbers, was 3.7. The actual was 3.4. That's from our meeting packet on February 9th. Is that, am I reading that right?
It was through.
The request was 3.7
yes.
and the actual was 3.4.
It
So-
was closer to 3.5.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I am going to push back a little bit and say, find the $11,000 in the budget. That's a lot of return that's coming back as free cash, and so I think the $11,000 can be found within the budget to keep it a level funded budget. We're going to ask two other departments. I believe that we're going to ask two other departments to do the same thing.
Well, and just to be clear, you're not talking about wages. You're talking about
Correct.
ordinary expenses.
Ordinary expenses, correct.
Yep. Okay. So the remainder of that increase is acceptable.
Yes, because that was the.
That was.
I am trying to hold everybody to the
I
instructions,
hear you,
and
I
the
hear you.
instructions were wages and
I hear you.
the known expenses,
Yep.
and that all the other operating expenses were to be remained levelly funded. And so I feel like I've sat on this table long enough that I feel like if we are going to issue the guidance and we are going to say these are the instructions, it is time to hold the departments accountable and say, we've given you this guidance, we've told you this is what is expected of you, and that should be met. That is what we're expecting you to do.
So can I just ask one more question?
Sure.
And I'm not challenging what you're saying. In terms of similar to the conversation that we just had with secondary.
Yep.
If a department head does the best to fit in the existing budget for ordinary maintenance, like they did in past years, and they run up against a challenge throughout the year, what's the instruction to departments?
To provide detail as to why that expense is. I hate calling out the same department all the time, but there is one department that does an excellent job at explaining exactly why that expense needs to increase and the ramifications if that expense does not increase.
Right.
That's the level of detail that I'd like to see from any department that is making those changes.
Okay. So, and that would be in the middle of the year, and obviously secondary would have to go to special town meeting.
Yes.
But if it was middle of the year and it was a $5,000 expense that can't be covered by the budget, I'm just making this up. Is that the reserve fund, or is that like a conversation between the select board and the FinCom, or is that a conversation where we're talking about bringing something else to town meeting after free cash is certified?
I think to me it would depend on the situation. I think that, I know I've asked for a couple of years and budget season gets going and I think it's just, I forget, it falls by the wayside. I've always wanted to see a free cash report line by line to see exactly where some of the stuff coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Are there lines that department heads are going, yeah, that's $5,000 gets put in that every year. And maybe they aren't thinking about that as closely.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that to me would be very situational dependent. If a department came in and said, there was a massive, and Caitlin's here, so excuse Caitlin, if her maintenance department came to her and said, we had a massive spill somewhere and, we had to order all this extra cleaning products to get it done. Well, obviously that's, kind of the unusual situation. And sure, maybe we take that to town meeting. If it's something where we're noticing a pattern of lines being underfunded and a department head coming in constantly and saying, hey, I need this funded and I need this. Mm-hmm. Okay, well then there's something going on in the way you're doing your budgeting. Okay. But I'm not trying to call anybody out or anything like that, but I do feel year after year we sit here and we issue this guidance and we say, this is the guidance, this is what we're asking you to do. And we ask for firm justification, and I don't feel like we get the justification maybe to the level of what personally I would expect. And we don't ever hold the departments firm. And so I kind of feel like if we aren't going to actually do what we say what we want, and then what's the point of going to that level of detail and issuing the instructions the way that we do? Mm-hmm. We have a great conversation every year about what is the definition of level funded, what are the exceptions to that, mm-hmm. But then it just seems like everything falls under the exception. So I am just looking to finally say, this is the instructions, this is what was done, this is what we asked of you. Submit it this way.
Okay.
So are we saying that this 10,577 should have been or should be listed with reasons for an exception on the narrative kind of a
I
thing?
think that's
Is
I
that
think
what
that's
you're
part of
saying?
what Deb is saying.
Okay. I want to be clear.
but it's also possible that in certain departments, and I know I have a couple more examples to look at, that there's potentially capacity. So, and I don't know. I'm not trying to put Caitlin any more on the spot than she already is.
Well, I can tell you, like, when I look at the first 3 lines of our budget,
Yeah.
the first line is we've got an anticipated FY26 end of year report audit that we need to do. We have to do it every 3 years. So
Yep.
instead of having it, as it was in the past, budgeted every year and we just don't touch it, it comes and it goes. So that's $4,000 of our AP budget expenses for next year. We've got another $2,200 or $2,292 in additional MASC conference attendees, and the prices of those go up. So if we're going to level fund all of our accounts payable expenses with the increase of subscriptions and prices of things, then it's going to have to eat away at our staffing.
I guess maybe it's a bigger conversation, because I'd like to know how is it going to eat at your staffing when the elementary school is, and I understand you guys have the biggest budget, so obviously I expect your amount of free cash coming back to be disproportionate compared to everyone else, but that it is sizable every year. So I'm saying I struggle with $10,000 not being able to be found in a budget that is turning back $300,000 in free cash. And the school has turned back $200,000 to $300,000 to $400,000 in free cash for the past few years. And I know under prior administrations, the justification of that was COVID money and different government subsidies and stuff that happened during that time. So I know that was kind of a odd period. But I still struggle with hearing that if we're asked to find $10,000, that cuts to staff or other areas when 3,000, it looks like almost 300 was turned back in free cash. So if that's a bigger discussion to have offline, I'm happy to do that. But I would like to understand that a bit more.
I can certainly get you more details on where the free cash is generated. Just to clarify, I know in some years it has been that high, and for the elementary school it wasn't that high for this particular year. But I can certainly give you all the details on that.
Okay.
Our bigger pot was secondary for FY25.
Okay.
Yep.
And just for numbers, and I appreciate the detail, but did you say earlier, Caitlin, that aside from what's already encumbered, you have about $35K
For secondary.
for secondary? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Elementary is a little bit harder because we have like the facilities and everything. But talking about, if something catastrophic happens and we have to have a company come out again and again and again to keep fixing a system. We've had that in other towns where when we have these exceptional costs, we've worked with the town to decide who's going to pay the invoice. Like, our budget's not really meant for the town building to have $40,000 in sprinkler expenses, repairs. And so if we can if those things happen, if we can continue to have sort of an open conversation about, whether our budget can support it or not for the building-based things, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
And that's not unlike what we do for other departments with facilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I think dialogue is great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So then the final two to draw your attention to for now, and again I will go through the budget one more time, is on our fire department. Ordinary expenses were increased $1,900 over this past year, or this current year, excuse me. So I didn't know if that was something that you also wanted to adjust, but it sounds like based on the conversation, the answer to that is yes. And I had that conversation with Chief Wonka earlier today. And emergency management department is also reflecting an increase of $500 over fiscal year 26. So I didn't know if that was something you want adjusted, but again, I'm assuming that is yes. Okay.
Well, to Deb's point, if we're holding everybody accountable, we're holding everybody accountable.
I actually didn't. I want to look to my left, but I can't. I thought that the assessors also had a slight increase in their budget, or was it just do you know off the top of your head, or could it have just been a line item?
I was losing battery over here, so. No.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Ordinary expenses are level funded.
So,
So it was all disconnected. There we go. If anybody didn't hear me, level funded.
Okay. Thank you.
so you said you had a conversation with Chief Wonka
Yes.
about that, and did you say what the outcome of that conversation was, or?
I mean, it's very similar to part of what Caitlin was describing. Costs have gone up in certain places, and so when he was looking through his budget, he thought those were reasonable things to put forward. But when I explained that the guidance was to level fund ordinary expenses, his response was, then I will find it in my budget. So,
Okay. All right. So looks like in summary we have, you said what about between the 300 plus the additional, we're at 5 something?
it puts you at 557.
557.
And again, those are just my numbers for recommendations.
Right.
You all may feel differently.
558, as you call it. And then 425 and the overlay, so wait,
Somewhere in the ballpark of an adjustment of about 584,000.
okay.
Brian, can we back up to snow removal?
Sure.
So that, if I'm understanding this correctly, this is for the increased pricing of materials
Mm-hmm.
and to support the contract that we use on the other side of town. How did you come up with 4140? Because I thought that was closer to almost 70.
Pull snow wages or snow removal back up. Okay. So yes. So I've got the numbers up in front of me. You currently fund at 68,600. Is what you've been funding for
Yeah.
the last several years. It does look like we went higher in FY25. That was just shy of 80,000.
Okay.
And as you all discussed with Glenn, we're over 130 this year in terms
Okay.
of costs. And so the goal was to try to move closer to 120,
Yep.
to try to keep pace with what we've experienced in FY25 and what we're experiencing for FY26. Again, you can't ever predict exactly how much material or exactly how many storms you're going to have to or what their duration will be. So it's always a bit of a moving target, but I think it's clear that budgeting the same $68,000 every year is not sufficient, even if we go back a few years.
Okay.
So it wasn't to cover everything that we've experienced this year, but to get us closer to where we're experiencing it.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Do we have a current wage study for a treasurer's position? Have we done anything like that recently?
We haven't. We tried to keep that position similar to the when it was elected, tax collector and town clerk as well, in alignment with the general government schedule grade F, which is where the other department heads in general government are.
Okay.
So that's what I was starting from, and that what I was proposing for an adjustment, keeping it budgeted for the mid 70s, would allow us in the first, as Selectman Bembury was pointing out earlier today, would keep us in the first 2 to 3 steps of that schedule.
Okay.
I hear gears turning. Who's got comments?
I'll go
Nope.
back to the budget again. Sorry.
I'm just curious, adding up these things that we've subtracted from the 557, 690, where does that roughly leave us at? I'm not sure I'm looking at the right numbers, and again, I don't need to know this minute, but so.
Is that the correct one? So it would put us, if we made all of these changes based on my rough math, it would put us back in a positive position of about 25 to 27,000.
Okay.
So we're back in balance with a little cushion to make some more adjustments. And I want smarter people than me to review this one more time to make sure that my rough math is mathing correctly, but it puts you back in balance.
Okay. Thank you.
That might be where that overlay swing, if people were inclined.
Sounds to me like we've a little bit of fine tuning to go, but we're not looking at, laying off anybody or having any drastic cuts anywhere, if things work out as we think they're going to be.
And I think to your point, Dan, this is obviously, I felt like 3 years ago we had this conversation. It was a very hard year. And these are some tough conversations and a lot of very thoughtful deliberation. But to what you just said, several of our peers are doing what you just described, and they're having very, very hard conversations. And I think this is another moment where we're just very privileged to be able to work amongst ourselves and work with department heads to find a reasonable solution to these things without having to go to those extents. So we will figure this out.
Okay.
Do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't have a calculator,
Okay.
so my math may be wrong.
Told you, you're smarter than me.
557, 690 deficit.
Mm-hmm.
425,916 against that. 100,000 against that. 10,000 against that. Still puts us at a deficit of 20,000, right? Not a surplus of 20,000?
1,774.
Right, 20,000.
Yeah.
One more time. Hold on.
Thank you.
That's when you consider the top 3 points
Mhm.
without considering the bottom 3, 4 points.
Yeah.
I will have to double check that again because I'm coming up with a surplus is no the wrong word, but a positive
No.
balance of 20.
You're not. I think maybe the difference is you're factoring in the 425.
Yep.
That's not. That's our interest earnings. The expense is actually 400.
400 is, yeah.
Then it would
The-
be worse.
That would
Because
be another
we've got
25
557 deficit, and if you're only doing 400,000, then it would be 510,000, so it would be 47,000.
Yeah, but did you adjust all the stuff in the next category? $61,704, $10,577.
No,
Yeah, you gotta add those.
That's the difference.
510.
that's more of a deficit then.
Yeah, I figured the first one is more, isn't it? Not less. We have to pay that out, the 61,000.
So
No.
No, we're
No,
not.
this is already in your budget. This is already in the budget request, so we'd be reducing the budget request by 61,000, by 10,577, by 500. So if you add all of those up as money that's now available for appropriation, plus the other adjustments that we've talked about in the paragraph above, you should have
Just under 20.
584,681 to work with.
Okay.
and we were already projecting a deficit of 557,690.
Mhm.
So the net of those two puts you in a positive position.
Okay.
Again, rough math, but
No, it's the last four.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't
Yeah.
quite sure how those fit in,
sorry,
because the other ones were
it makes sense to me. But
deficits and the other were
Yep.
recoveries and,
these were already reflected in the budget, and I wanted to draw them up to your attention because of your guidance when you issued your budget guidance.
okay,
But if you reduce them, they're now available for appropriation.
right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Sorry about that. I thought to put a little table at the bottom, and I should have done that. So
Can do that in your spare time next time.
Brian, the tasers is just changing it to a regular and annual payment instead of over 5 years,
correct.
instead of dropping the 30 in there.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And
that
does the
removes
library? Oh, sorry.
That removes it from the capital planning committee's consideration.
We've already done that.
I assumed you had. This just closes the loop on that. Yep.
Okay. Does the library, does that include the position she was asking for or no? Okay.
So that's an additional request that was on the table from the library. It does not include that, and that was a little over $6,000.
6,000.
I know that you all discussed that with the director and Mr. Gadet. I know that of your conversation, what I heard, it sounded like maintaining state certification was the initial priority, and then the secondary consideration would be anything beyond there. So I focused on making sure that we maintain that.
Is your budget in the system so that we can review it and talk about it next week?
If you're okay with it, I will put it all in under review 1.
Okay.
So we can do that. Yep.
Last call.
Next.
All right, let's talk STM.
Okay. Pull it back up in front of me.
Well, while he's getting ready for that, could I just inject a little humor into our proceedings here?
Please do.
Our select board member, James Loyne, may not realize it, but inadvertently you may be setting yourself up to be a stand-up comedian in your next life and suggesting that Brian should do something in his spare time.
Well, while some people might find me humorous, there might be other people to your immediate right that would disagree with that adamantly.
Okay.
But thank you for your vote of confidence.
Okay, annual town meeting. So you all were kind enough to walk through the first draft last week with me, and I just summarized in your memo that we have included the bill of a prior year. We've included the closeout of the library building project, $138. There was the request I submitted to you all to close out 2 former grant funds that have a deficit balance in them, so that we can resolve that before June 30. There was the general bylaw request from our friends on the museum committee to formally have their board codified within the town bylaws with that slight amendment. So that was redlined for the select board's review. And then town clerk Richard Newton back in January had originally put forward a proposal to amend the dog bylaw to clean up some stuff that changed after Ollie's Law was passed. And so that all appears in here, redlined, though I do have an outstanding question as to whether or not you want the entire bylaw printed in the ATM. It's making for a quite lengthy document that's a robust bylaw. Or if you only want the sections of the bylaw that we're amending to be listed. We've done it both ways. Your past practice was to print a lot of pages, and then when we did the full zoning update, we just highlighted what was being changed. So either can be permissible.
I was gonna say, not my decision, but I'd say save trees.
Yeah, I was going to
I'd
say
save trees.
less is more.
Yeah.
So I can work with council to pare that down to
Yeah.
something that just focuses on the proposed changes.
Yeah.
38 words.
Could you, and I haven't scanned it up to see what you've done, could you potentially include just a note in the article information, so when this goes home, that says something to the effect of, please visit the town website should you want to read the entire bylaw?
We can do that, and we can also, anytime we do something like this, we always put a copy on print at town hall.
Yeah.
So for folks who either don't want to go on the online or they want to come in and review it in person, they can come in and see the red line changes.
Yes.
So I can do both.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be great.
Absolutely. So there's all of that. I highlighted for our last one, and it's telling me I'm going to resend it because you spent a lot of time looking over DOR guidance documents last year. So the section, the clause that was not adopted but debated quite significantly last year was clause 22J. That's related to the HERO Act and veterans benefits. So I will send you that DOR guidance one more time to see if you all want to consider something for this year. Keep in mind, if you adopt this one, it has to be adopted, and there's a component for the select board to take a vote on a percentage. That has to happen before July 1st. So if you want it to be in place for a fiscal year, it's got to be in place before the fiscal year begins. So if you are feeling like we can do that and you want to do that, just keep that timeline in place. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in effect. Or you could always adopt it either in one of the upcoming town meetings or later in the year with an effective date for a future fiscal year if you wanted to. So just keep that in mind, but this one does come with a timeline to it. So I'll send that to you. I have a request from some department heads to look at a parking bylaw. You've never had a parking bylaw. Two issues have come up regarding parking. One is the enforcement of handicap parking. There's a very specific section of Mass General Law that can be adopted by the voters, and it then empowers the police department to use the non-criminal disposition ticketing process to assess the fines that are permissible under that law. The funds usually get put into a special fund to be expended on projects related to accessibility.
So the funds stay local for that.
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Okay.
This is all local receipts, but it usually is identified for that fund for that explicit purpose.
Okay.
The second issue related to parking that we've had some challenges with is regarding the use of municipal parking lots, specifically during our busy hours and overnight. And so when a parking lot, as sometimes people have experienced with the library and some of our others, when they're really busy during open hours, parking can be a premium. And there's times that non-patrons are using municipal lots for non-municipal purposes. And so that's been a challenge, but also some overnight parking has been challenging for snow removal and some other issues. And so there's also examples where some towns have adopted some rules around, during specific business hours, certain municipal lots are reserved for the purpose that the parking lot is affixed to. So if it was this building or if it was the library or the school, they're reserved for their use and not for other public purposes, but outside of those hours, maybe they are. Or there's some language around overnight parking and whether or not somebody can occupy a parking space overnight. So I said I would bring those requests forward. If you all are willing to work on those, I can bring forward some recommendations on what that language looks like. I didn't want to have council spend time on that if that's not something that you all want to entertain. And then there was one that I forgot to include on here, but Board of Health member Sally Delaney, during her budget presentation, asked you all to consider, specifically the select board, whether or not you would entertain an amendment to their composition from a 3-member board to a 5-member board. And so we don't have that conversation tonight, but that's an open question from the Board of Health.
Anyone?
I don't know much about the need of the Board of Health, but I do, personally, I would like to look into, personally, as a member here, I'd like to look into the parking situation.
Okay.
Because I don't know that it's a huge problem, but when people, maybe they live in Northfield and they have a friend that lives in Deerfield and they decide, we're gonna park here for the day
Yeah.
and drive away
Right.
to wherever we're gonna go and to meet here, it's more
Right.
convenient for us, and then we're trying to plow the snow.
Right.
For example.
Right.
I think perhaps we could look into that. Or not even gonna, you're not particularly gonna plow the snow, just somebody wants to go to the library and 5 out of the 12 spaces are used up by somebody that's not even around here.
Right.
Worth looking into, I think. Again, I don't know about the Board of Health.
Yeah.
And for the veterans thing, I know this is an issue I pushed before. I think it's worth looking into. How much it would cost, I don't know. And it depends on how many veterans there are.
Right.
Some people think, well, we could have an influx of veterans. Well, perhaps we could, coming back from wherever they put their life on the line for us.
Yep.
I don't know, but I'd like to have that looked into from a financial point of view.
So I can send the DOR guidance back out to everybody from last year. The guidance hasn't evolved, but the calculation would have to come from the Board of Assessors. Who's eligible for those exemptions is not anything that my office has access to, so I have to rely on them for some more guidance. And I know that the board did a lot of that work last year when it was even being contemplated, so maybe the foundational work's already in place, and it's a matter of just updating those numbers. So I can ask.
Brian, I seem to remember with that one, we did a portion of that, but then we pulled the other half because we were waiting for information from the assessors. So
I think there was some outstanding questions about that one, and I think we were feeling like we were right up against like advertising for a town meeting, and so I don't think there was enough certainty in that. I do know that the Board of Assessors provided some significant work on it, but I don't think it answered all the questions, to your point.
So I guess, is there a way to go back and...
I have to go through the meeting minutes.
Okay.
That's okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
If we're gonna talk about it again, instead of
Stay
just having
focused.
those questions coming back up again, if we can ask the assessors to get us the information that was missing from last time and present it again, then maybe we can move the ball a little quicker.
We'll zero in on those meeting minutes. I believe that was in May and June of last year, and try to zero in on what was missing. To your point, yes, we looked at sections or clauses I and J, and I you proceeded with, and I is tied to the Department of, I think it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, excuse me, and what they do for an adjustment each year, and whatever that rate is, the Department of Revenue adopts. And so, so you did approve that one, and the voters approved it. So,
Yeah, as I recall, at least one of the questions was about the second thing.
yep,
Jay, as you said it
Yep.
was. If the select board votes to do this and the town votes to accept this, it may cost $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, we don't know, but all of a sudden we've got 40 new veterans here, and if we can't afford to do it in future years, are we locked into always being able to do it once we vote to do it? I don't know the answer to that either.
So I think there was that question. Is it only an increase from year to year, or could, I don't think this is going to happen, but say instead there was a reason to reduce, maybe there was a reduction in costs or whatever. But I think there was a question of compounding that never got, I don't think people felt completely satisfied with whether or not there was a compounding element of that.
Okay.
So I understand that. Okay. Other than those, I'm not aware of any other bylaw requests or changes to town structure. And then everything else, other than what we talked about tonight with OPEB, if we go down that road, I have to change some language and add a new article that we haven't had before in the ATM packet. But everything else is the same as you saw last week with the additions from what you approved last week.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to renew it or review it rather? Excuse me. Or would you prefer to go through it article by article again together? I'm seeing some no's. I'm seeing some circles.
I reviewed it. I just have one question.
Okay.
For the museums bylaw,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't here last week, so is this typical that a bylaw calls out that financial resources are from the town? And do our other committees that are similar to them have that in their bylaws as well?
I can't answer your first question about whether or not is it typical.
Okay.
What I would say for Erving is that you have a very light section of your public officials bylaw. The ones that are a little more detailed and robust are going to be the ones that you've adopted in the last 5 to 6 years. So like capital planning has a very long section. We updated, there's another board, I can't remember if it was historical or another that we updated recently. So this would be in line with those. So no, I don't think you have that in the others. With that being said, I can paraphrase what I recall the chair of that committee saying, but I think she was trying to articulate that the language as it was currently presented specifically talked about fundraising and seeking special revenues like grants, and they are fine with that, but it felt like the language was suggesting that that's where they were going to be spending all of their focus, and not acknowledging that they would obviously want to sit down and have a conversation with all of you about what is an appropriate support level that the town can provide as well. So I think she was just looking to balance that out in the language. It's possible that instead of adding this in, maybe the opposite is true and removing what is suggested instead about fundraising and grants. Maybe it's something that's less specific and it's just more about and plan for the financial needs of the museum.
Yeah, I to me it just reads funny.
Yeah.
And I would hate, I'm thinking like long term down the road, and if someone is interpreting that as, let's just say they put a project forward and the town said no, can someone then go back to this bylaw and say, you said the town's going to pay for it?
Yeah.
And so my concern, I'm just one, if for continuity's sake, if other bylaws don't have it in there, then does this bylaw need to have it in there? In my opinion, obviously, they are a department of the town, and so they would put forth a budget and go through the process as any other town department would be. So
Agreed.
they would absolutely have that support.
Agreed.
And so to me, it just, when I read it, it was kind of like, oh, what is this? Seems odd.
So maybe it's less that the red lines are needed and more it's that what was originally in there was too much in terms of talking about seeking special revenue funds, and instead maybe it's just providing or planning for the financial needs of the museum. Something a little more succinct, because I think you're absolutely right. There's also no statutory authority for a museum committee, so by default they don't have the ability to seek grants alone. They would have to come back to their appointing authority, which is the select board, to seek authorization, as all the other departments who report to the select board have to do. So they would go through that exact same process.
Okay.
So, yep. So would that make sense for a proposed amendment, is to just actually pare down this language rather than be more granular about it and just be a little broader in terms of what this is talking about?
I personally think it makes sense because to me, if we are establishing them, we would treat them as any other
Agreed.
board and commission within the community. So they come, they put their budget in the winter, and
Okay. So let me provide a mock-up that shows that language instead, and I'll reach back out to the museum committee and make sure that they're aware of this and see if that causes any red flags. I think, again, the concern I heard was that this seemed to just focus on special revenues,
Yeah.
and they didn't want it to look like that was the only thing that they were going to do.
totally understand.
Okay.
Okay, what else? Bill?
Sir.
Could I go back to the dog bylaw?
Yes, sir.
If I'm correct, it says that we're going to delete the 121.6 dog fund.
Yes.
So it won't exist
Correct.
under the dog policy.
Correct.
But the rest of the dog policy will stay intact?
Correct.
So there's a number of places throughout the dog policy that talks about drawing funds in emergencies from the dog fund.
So I'm going to go back and clean all that up.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have the town clerk review all of that again.
It's a lot.
Is it a lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
He's
scattered throughout, so you have to read all of it.
I
to
will go
see
through it with him, and we'll try to catch all of that.
Okay.
He proposed this back in January, and that
Yeah.
was brought to his attention. So he may have a more current red line version of this
Okay.
that I didn't have.
Yeah.
So let me just ask him for that.
Okay.
And just for anybody who's interested, the rationale behind that is from the town accountant. It's not a fund that we currently have set up, and your costs for the animal control related services far exceed what you collect in fees. And so to have another special revenue fund that doesn't match what you need to run the service to begin with didn't make sense.
Right.
You have about 240 dogs, I think, each year that are.
So I can give you one particular place, 121-24,
Okay.
talks about in an emergency, funds coming from the dog fund for that,
Okay. Yeah, we'll strike that.
And 12111, I did a quick query.
not
of
to
it.
exceed $100 for veterinarian services.
Right. And the way we would handle that today is run it through the department, and if there was an issue in the department where costs were exceeding what we had for expenditures, we would come to both of you, you know, the FinCom and the Select Board, and talk to you about the needs and whether or not a reserve fund transfer made sense.
Okay.
So, and I don't know how important it is that this stuff matches.
Mhm.
The definition of a commercial kennel and a hobby kennel in the zoning bylaws are different than what is in this proposed.
That's part of the changes regarding Ollie's law that
Okay.
the town clerk is trying to address.
I have missed a couple of the most recent planning board meetings.
Okay.
I have not seen anything on the agenda where it has been brought to the planning board to discuss those changes
Okay.
and potentially update those. And at least like the hobby kennel is, when it's talking about a hobby kennel license, that's the definition, I guess. And the one Dick provided, that's different. The definition of a commercial kennel is different.
Right.
So I just want to make sure if we're going to have
Please.
bylaws, they should align across all boards.
100%. So I will bring that to the town clerk's attention. I'm not sure if he's brought this to the chair of the planning board or
Okay.
to the town planner. I know the planning board's been working on proposed amendments and preparing for a public hearing.
Yep.
So I will get that flag for them. Any more hot button questions?
Just curious on the same thing for vaccination. When it talked about vaccinations, I assume this is strictly the rabies vaccination it's referring to in this. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Is it
Okay.
wrong? That's the only vaccination that the town clerk's office tracks.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we want that specified, or is,
No, I didn't know if he tracked others. And so there has been a shift. Some people choose to not vaccinate and do something called titer testing. So I would just want to, if he tracked others, I would just question if that some communities actually have specific that they will accept titer testing in lieu of a vaccination record. So it's just going to be, but if rabies is the only one, it would be a moot point.
okay.
I'm sorry, what kind of testing were you talking about?
Titer testing. It's where they can test the blood to make sure that the levels of, I believe it's your antibodies, are high enough, and so you don't have to vaccinate. It's a lot of people choose not to vaccinate annually and instead do titer testing to make sure that their animals are still covered.
I haven't heard him explore or discuss exploring that right now, and I know he's
Okay.
been maintaining the rabies certification as a requirement. So
I don't think you can do it for rabies. I know you can for others. I don't think you can for rabies, so
Yeah.
it's probably a moot point.
Okay. So if there's no other changes, I will look into everything that was discussed today, and I will send off the information related to Clause 22J, so everybody can look at that. I'll follow up with the assessors to see if they can help us with identifying some of the outstanding information from last year. It sounded like there was some general openness to seeing some language on the parking bylaw, so I can try to pull that together for next week. But before you all move on, Emily brought a sticky note. I need the select board to review the annual town election warrant, which is on the first thing before you really even get to Article 1. And I need you to let me know if you're okay with ballot question number 1, so that the town clerk can start to prepare the election ballots. So that is going to be page 17 in your packet. It says page 1 at the top of the annual town meeting warrant.
Is that Article 1?
This is page. If you go up a page from Article 1, and it's the address to the constables for posting, and then it moves right into the annual town elections. And it announces when the annual town elections will be.
That's all for Town of Irving constables?
Yep. And then so go down to that first heading that says annual town elections.
Yep.
And then right below there, it talks about when the town election was called for Monday, May 4th at 10 a.m. It lists all the positions that are available for election.
Yep.
And then if you move to the second column, it says question 1.
Okay.
Question 1 is the ballot question. It's a yes/no vote on whether or not to have the elected treasurer's position become appointed. This language is set by statute, other than putting in the title treasurer is verbatim what the statute requires. So I don't know that we have much discretion beyond that, but I need to know that you're okay with it so you can prepare the ballots.
I am
And
okay with it.
April 1st is the cutoff to do that.
So do you do that in the form of a motion?
I don't know that we need the motion today, but I need to know if there's any concerns. If you want to go as far as a motion, that's up to you, but it's really just focused on ballot question 1.
I have no concerns with it.
I have no
I'm
concerns.
in
So.
favor of moving forward, but just to solidify it, I will make a motion that we approve question 1 as it appears for the annual town election ballot.
Thank you.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. We will get that back to the town clerk.
Could I suggest that since it's the treasurer's office and it does have to do with finance, that the finance committee, I'd move that the finance committee recommend this also.
You like it?
Sounds like a motion to me.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions?
Wonderful. We'll tell the town clerk so we can proceed. Thank you. Okay. So I have a little more homework to do. We'll get that over to you guys.
Any other business for the joint?
I just have a question about that Article 1. Since the election comes prior to the town meeting and the vote is at the election, is there any effort to have an outreach for people to understand, other the few that aren't watching our meetings, get a chance to understand why it's being requested?
Yeah, that's a great question. We didn't have enough runway to be able to do that in advance of the STM. But to your question, it's a fair one, and I'm sure there are people with questions. I'd be happy to host conversation here or anywhere that people would like to, and we can put that out where people can come and ask questions about anything on the warrant, including that question, and ask for information and review it. So one thing we all have to be very careful of: we can't advocate for a yes or a no. We can't advocate for a specific political position on something, but we can provide any information that the voters are asking for. So I'd be happy to do that.
Just from my experience, if people have not had explained to them why, they're inclined to vote no.
Right.
They don't understand it.
Right.
So,
Well, I think you all are familiar with state elections. You get like the red book that comes home.
yeah.
And it gives you sort of like a no vote means this, a yes vote means
Yeah.
this, and people can read that, and if that informs their decision, then that's wonderful. So I'd be happy to provide that type of information.
I want one other question before we adjourn, unless there's something else to do. Is there any plans for anything at all for the 250th anniversary? Buy a couple banners to hang off the water tower before they tear it down or something? Anything?
It felt too far away last year, and now that it is speeding upon us, I have to admit I don't think we have firm plans. But that's a great question. It is the 250th this year, and some communities, specifically some who are very in tune with their history for the Revolution, have been planning their events and their reenactments, and the state even made some grants available to help towns fund these types of activities. So I'm sure July will be a very active time period for our state. So I know the Historic Commission was considering potentially participating in some manner. It's been a couple months since I had a chance to meet with them, so I can follow up with them. But yes, that's a great reminder that July is fast approaching.
Maybe it's a banner to hang off the town hall and a couple of fire stations, municipal buildings or something
Yeah.
to show we recognize it perhaps.
Good idea. Yeah, I can reach out to the department heads and the Historic Commission and see what, if anything, is being considered.
Thanks.
Okay.
I think the water tank would be a great idea, hang a banner.
You're not offering to climb up there, are you?
Ryan, is there a grant that we could use to maybe put a flag on the water tank and get it fixed up?
Maybe.
Must be.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just gonna ask, are you gentlemen gonna discuss the Swamp Road tonight?
So we were debating before you got here whether or not you all would want to have that conversation. Do you want to have the conversation?
I'd love to know what's going on with Swamp Road,
Perfect.
Okay.
but that's up to the committees to decide, not just me.
I'm seeing a lot of heads moving to the affirmative. So
Okay.
if you're so inclined to hang around for a little bit more, let's move on to the next topic, which is review of the pre-25% design for Swamp Road Bridge project. And we have,
You all have it in your packet. You all don't. Want to go show and tell?
so
Is this table to kind of share on the other table? Actually, we have enough that we can. There's one more over here. This one's long.
Goes over the book.
That's true. You should do the conversation. No. Okay. Everybody's got a copy now. So, as just for anybody who's watching from home, many may recall that we had the unfortunate experience in July of 2021 of experiencing a significant flood on Keat Brook, and we lost Swamp Road Bridge. The foundations were stacked stone. They were undermined under that flood, and the deck dropped about a foot plus, and it was not safe for vehicular traffic, so it had to be removed. We had a bit of a delay on the beginning start of getting this project engineered, and we had started to do the work ourselves, and eventually our previous town planner, Mariah Kurtz, worked with the select board, submitted the project to the small bridge program that MassDOT run, and we were successfully awarded engineering and a design grant. The program has a relationship with an engineer, so they MassDOT assigned somebody, a firm to work on the project for us. So though it's a grant to us, the money never runs through our bank accounts, and it's not a contract between the town and the engineer. MassDOT handles all of that relationship. So who they assigned to us is Perry Corp. They've been assigned to the project for a little over a year. We turned over all the documents that we had done in our initial work, but they had to come out and do their own due diligence and met with us on site about a year ago at this point. So we did all the site conditions, talked about what worked for the bridge, what some of our challenges were with the bridge. I think for anybody who's familiar with it, it was a single lane bridge. It had a very steep angle to it. If you're coming south on North Street, trying to make that turn, it was probably pretty tight. And if you were making that turn with a trailer or anything behind you, even tighter. And I think the bridge abutments showed you some of the wear and tear from people trying to make those turns. And the reason it was oriented like that was because there used to be two bridges in that area. Used to cross over Keyup Brook, and so that was like a north-south alignment. And then there was a subsequent bridge that went back over Keyup Brook and continued up North Street. And that was discontinued in the 40s, but they left Swamp Road Bridge right where it was. So the proposal that you have in front of you is a proposal that would shift Swamp Road Bridge about 50 feet north, and it would allow us to get as close to a 90-degree angle that we'll probably ever achieve on North Street, turning north or south onto Swamp Road Bridge. It would go from a 1 or 1.5 lane bridge to a 2-lane bridge with a shoulder. There were some questions at the meeting that we held last Wednesday with residents from the area about whether or not it would include a sidewalk. MassDOT's preference is to always include sidewalks. I just made it very clear to them that we currently do not have any pedestrian accommodations on that section of North Street or high-end Swamp Road, and we were not in a position to be doing that with this specific project at this time. But having the capacity to do it in the future, if the residents so wished, made sense. So the shoulder would be wide enough to make that a sidewalk, if you wanted to add that in the future, but we're not under an expectation to do it as part of this project. It would keep the alignment, so we would, one, be able to fix what happened on North Street, part of that erosion that we experienced with the bridge, also undermine the retaining wall on North Street, so there's an emergency riprap that was installed to stabilize that. This project will allow us to fix both sides of that, and it would also allow us to avoid interruptions with some of the neighbors at the corner of Swamp and High Street. There was a concern about shifting too far north and creating sort of like headlights into people's front windows and some other nuisances. This keeps that orientation lower. There's a bit of a sort of earth and tree line barrier that would sort of protect people from that orientation and give you plenty of turning radius. So where we're at is a pre-25% design. The next step for MassDOT is to advance to a formal 25% submission. The feedback from the residents last week were largely supportive. If anything, it was more a question of how quick will this happen? How quick can we get to funding this project? So one step at a time. The first step is, are we okay with this concept? I know it's really just looking high level down at a map, but are we okay with this idea of an alignment, a 2-lane bridge, keeping it as close as we can to the old alignment so that we're not disturbing anybody else, but we're fixing some of the known issues with the previous bridge? And if you're okay with that, I should also mention this is full bank width. So this is not building a structure back into Keyup Brook. This would be putting it on the edges where it should have been to begin with. So we're not constricting the brook as the previous structure did. Are you okay with this so that we can formally submit to MassDOT for your 25% design? That will allow them to start their internal process to review the design, get us the feedback we need, make any changes we have to, and then advance to 75% and eventually final design. So that's question one. And then I can just mention what we need to look at.
Emphasizing that there's no taking of property.
And there's no taking of property with this, with an asterisk on that. There's no changes to North Street's layout. There's no changes to the layout for the roadway for Swamp Road. The land beyond Swamp Road, between High Street and Swamp, is protected land. It's privately owned. We're not proposing any impacts to that. So that's a really great clarifier. The one thing that is a little nebulous are county commissioners from the 30s and 40s. When they moved, I remember I told you the story about the second bridge that no longer exists. When they did that, they moved North Street, so it was on the side of the brook that we all experience today. When they took that, they left a bit of a ambiguous space where the brook is. Who exactly owns the brook? It appears that the county commissioners meant to take it as part of their taking when they moved everything over, but the assessing records showed something from the 40s that looked like a bit of a parcel. So it was a bit of this no man's land. So I do think that there will likely, to the selectman's point, be a potential need just at town meeting to clarify what happened back in the 40s, to make that very clear that the county commissioners intended to take it, therefore the townspeople of Erving are taking it, just to clear up any ownership piece. But beyond that, there's no other adjustments that we need to make.
Is there a property owner that thinks that that is their property?
There was a property owner who has since sold the property, who was adamant that she did not own that property. And she didn't understand why it was showing on her assessing record. She was very adamant about it. And the challenge was her deed. Old deeds use landmarks, not meets and bounds. And the deed that existed back then said it was just north of the bridge. Well, it wasn't talking about Swamp Road Bridge. It was talking about the bridge that no longer existed. So that's where this issue was coming from. So that property owner owned the dam that exists there, but they didn't own south of there. And they were adamant about that. And so that was something that we had to work with that owner as she was preparing to sell. And that, I think the sale happened about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So it's somewhat of a current conversation. I know Jackie's done a significant amount of research. I know we went through the county commissioner's records to try to find what they did back then. So we've pulled it all. So I think we have enough to work with council to clean this up.
Okay.
So no, we're not planning to take anything from any of our existing property owners. We think we need to clean up what the county commissioners did back in the 40s.
Okay.
Is there an estimated cost of this project, or we don't know that?
You ask a good question. So
3
yes,
3.6 was it?
is about 3.7 with a healthy contingency on it, because we don't know when you're going to go to construction. I expected it to come in around 3, so I'm not shocked by this price. Church Street is already at 3, so, or just shy of 3. So I'm not shocked by this price. For our funding strategy, we don't have the full funding strategy yet. You have the current design grant, so we're not paying for this engineering. It typically leads to being eligible for up to a $500,000 construction grant for small bridges. So not that we have that in hand and not that we have signed agreements, but typically once you're in the program, that's where you end up. So expecting that that's one funding source that can come to you. The legislature also pulled special legislation together in 2021 to deal with the flooding, because many towns experienced this, and we were denied FEMA funding for that flood. The state as a whole didn't hit a certain threshold, so the governor couldn't certify something or something to that effect. So special legislation was prepared, and we still have funding remaining in that fund, approximately $700,000. So between those two funding sources, you're already over $1 million. So that doesn't give you the full 3.6 or 7 that we need, but it does get you a third of the way there. So we can continue to work on funding strategies with you all. But until we finalize this design,
Yeah.
we can't say with 100% certainty.
What's the timeline looking like?
So, the Church Street Bridge experience taught me never to be overly optimistic about timelines for bridges. What I will say about this is that we're not currently searching for federal or state funding beyond the small bridge program.
Okay.
So as long as you're okay with that as voters, as long as you're okay with us not searching for that, those additional reviews that we experienced on Church Street, which is federally and state funded, they're conducting the construction and they're going to turn that project back to us. This project's going to stay with us. We're going to build it ourselves. We can move quicker. The reviews are less. So the question really is, how quickly can we say, yes, this is our 25% concept. Yes, proceed. Get that feedback from MassDOT. Make the necessary revisions. Get that 75% plan turned back around. Get them through any final changes. Deal with this layout issue with the brook, and get ready for town meeting. Another year. I don't think it'll be FY27, but it may be something that we're looking at for FY28.
Okay. Is it possible that land issue be worked on while the 25% and the 75% and okay.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
So we're talking like 2 fiscal years out probably before we need the funding.
Probably. I think
Or
we
no,
will
really one?
we'll be far enough along with Church Street Bridge that we'll know the final costs and whether or not we have any other participating costs that we need to provide for on that project. And you have a outstanding borrowing authority on that one. That was 1.5, I believe, million in borrowing capacity. So we'll be able to figure out how you're going to finalize that project, and have a chance to give the FinCom and the Capital Planning Committee update. I know I told the Select Board we received some positive news from MassDOT on the Farley Bridge, that they are going to help us close the funding gap on the final repairs that need to be done to get Farley reopened. So knowing that those two bridges will be either well underway this summer or come to completion in the next 10 months, I think we'll be in a much different place to be able to have a conversation about what local resources we'll have to put towards Swamp Road Bridge.
So, this is a point of order. I'm open to commentary and feedback, but this is the select board that
This one is
the-
at this stage because we're not really doing anything other than submit this. You're giving your engineer the guidance to submit to MassDOT.
Any other questions or input from either board?
I would just say from a financial point of view, we've asked the questions we should ask. We know bridges are not cheap, but we also know people want, I believe, most people want this bridge rebuilt. Currently, to me, it's a safety issue. It's access to a state park that's heavily used. There is another access, but people are driving through our residential neighborhood with trailers and whatever they're going up there with.
Right.
It would be better, I think, for the inhabitants of Erving if this bridge was fixed and they went up North Street instead of going through, was it High Street or wherever they're going, Church Street, however they're getting there. So financially, I think it's a good thing to proceed. Your decision, but just our thought.
So I said, solicit feedback and commentary. Bill, any?
Yeah, I'm just ready to make a motion.
I'm ready to entertain it.
So make a motion to approve the Swamp Road Bridge pre-25% design concept prepared by Perry Corporation, authorizing Perry Corp to submit the plan to Mass DOT on behalf of the town of Erving.
I will second that motion. Any other discussion?
None.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. We'll get that done. Thank you.
All right. So, any other business for the three boards while we're together? Hearing nothing, I will.
Joint meeting next week, right? On 30th. It's the one I don't think is on the calendar.
Yes, I do know that the board will have pretty full agenda, and you have some work to take care of before your joint meeting. So it's possible if we had to move to 7:30. Is that possible? I know.
Yes.
I just don't want to overpromise 7 o'clock and have them still deep in conversation at 7 and not be able to finish that while you all are waiting or delaying you. So
Do you want to just make it 7:30?
I want to. Jake obviously can't be here today. He'll be back tomorrow, so I just want to have that conversation with him. But as soon as I get confirmation, I can email all of you. But I think it's possible that we may need to 7:30.
So we'll just plan on 7:30.
Okay. I just can't speak for him. So
You can't, but
I can't.
I just said I think we should plan on 7:30.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So let it be written.
Thank you all.
did I hear a motion to?
Are you guys going back to regular
We
session?
are returning to regular session.
Make a motion to adjourn the joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and Capital Planning Committee with the Board of Selectmen returning to their normal session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Please don't make me say that again.
No, it was very thorough.
Okay. So, if my check boxes are correct, we have 2 items remaining.
There's a van driver.
Yes. So, yeah, the van driver position. So I will summarize for you that I did participate on that screening committee. We did have two very viable candidates that we opted to interview, and at the last minute, one did withdraw because he had other interests that and commitments that he had made. He was very, so what I'm looking for, very polite, professional, and
Absolutely.
his other commitments he just felt very passionate about. But so we did proceed with an interview of Mr. Carteropoli, and what I will say is the committee as a whole, even if there were multiple candidates, can say without hesitation that he would have been certainly he would have vied for the position regardless. He presented very well, demonstrated a lot of empathy, a lot of experience with driving professionally and understanding the equipment, the safety requirements. His licensure exceeds the requirements for this. And beyond just his professional driving experience and everything else, the committee just felt like he would be a very, very good fit for this community center, for our people who participate here. And he meshed very well with two other members of the committee who are both employed here. So I guess all that to say, with confidence, that I would recommend this candidate for the position.
I have no concerns, and I'll make a motion to appoint William Carteropoli as a part-time up to 19 hours per week van driver at a starting pay rate of grade A, step 1 on the general government compensation schedule at $18.28 per hour, with a 1-year probationary period pending a pre-employment medical screening and query check, with a start date on or before April 6, 2026.
I will second that. Any other discussion?
None?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. And then to review and approve the treasury warrants, I will make a motion that we approve the payroll warrant, PR number 19, in the aggregate amount of $236,589.89.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I will make a motion to approve the warrant 26-PR 19 benefits in the aggregate amount of $82,251.21.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, I will sign that. Any other business we need to discuss tonight before?
I don't believe so. We have an executive session.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay, so with that being said, I will move that we go into executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares, and I do so declare, American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, Local 1765, Water and Wastewater Unit. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Smith, will you call the roll?
Chairman Loin,
Aye.
Selectman Benbury,
Aye.
And we will not be returning to regular session. Thank you, everybody. Good night.